Hello and welcome! When buying console games, you do need to be careful, especially with older titles, since it may not be compatible with the newer systems. Sure, some systems like the Xbox One is backwards compatible with some older titles and future compatible with newer systems, yet Sony and Nintendo systems, it's not always going to be the case. But this is only going to be true with official support. Unofficially, through the power of emulation, there is a way for you to be able to play your older games on pretty much anything. From PCs playing PS3 and Wii games, to a Vita playing Game Boy and NES games, or even a Linux handheld playing Super Nintendo or PlayStation 2 titles. The catch? It's finding a way to convert your existing games into a format which these emulators can accept. And that process is either free but complicated, or pricey and very easy. So today I want to show you how I was able to back up my entire game library and the tools that I use to do it. Now I want to start off with a simple reminder. Just because you already own your game doesn't mean you get to legally download the same game from the internet, since that is piracy, and depending on the copy that you own, the ROM may not even be the same game. I and countless others have already made videos about the legality of ROMs if you want to learn more. Though, so long as you back up your own games, you will be in the clear. So how do you start backing up your own games? Well, you can either go and take the game and copy it directly from the cartridge itself with the right hardware, or extracting the files from the classic or legacy collections that you may already own. Let's start with extracting games from these collections, as it doesn't require bespoke hardware and can be oftentimes the cheapest way to get your games. How you extract them depends on the collection. However, be aware that not all re-releases are ROM collections. Some are remakes and does not contain the original ROM files, like with the Sonic Origins collection. So do your research before you buy. For collections that you can extract the ROMs from, like the Jurassic Park and the now delisted Sega Genesis collection, getting the games is as easy as opening the games folder, finding the ROMs, copying them, maybe even renaming them, and you're good to go. However, most of these ROM collections like to bury their games within other files and sometimes can be difficult to extract. This is why the community has created several tools to extract them and guides for said tools, like this from Macola 1453 or the Red Project on GitHub. These guides aren't too difficult to follow, and the most they'll ask you to do is to run a Python script in the game's folder. Even if you don't already own these classic collections, I would strongly recommend buying them, as they are some of the best value ways to own many of these games and can quickly fill the holes in your own library. Especially since some of these original games are almost impossible to obtain otherwise. I'll have the guides linked in the description below. Though, my only tip when you are going through these guides, if you're on a Windows system and need to install Python, do so from the Microsoft Store, as it saves you quite a lot of headache during the setup process. With that said, extracting games from collections isn't exclusive to PC games. If you already have a large library of digital re-releases on your older systems, like I do with my Wii, 3DS, Wii U, PS3, PSP, and Vita, these are also titles that you can extract too. It just takes a lot more work, since extracting requires the installation of custom firmware and moving the game files from the console to a PC. I demonstrated how to do this in several guides for several of these systems over the years, so I'll link that playlist in the cards as well as the description. But don't fret if you missed the opportunity to buy these digital games back in the day, since some of these games were physically re-released in dedicated systems by Nintendo and Sega in the mid-2010s. Say hello to the Nintendo and Sega Mini. They are not the cheapest systems today, but they do hold some of the best bang for the buck game libraries from their respective systems. To get their ROMs, you will need to install custom firmware to the mini systems, but the process is super easy and the results are well worth it, especially if you wanted to get your hands on classic Nintendo games again without paying a monthly fee. But going back to obtaining ROMs from the games you already have, how do you go about obtaining ROMs that aren't in a retro collection? It's not like Mickey Speedway USA for the Game Boy Color is getting a re-release anytime soon. Well, if your system is new enough, like a 3DS here, as long as the system is modified, you can extract them using the same tools that you use to extract your Virtual Console titles. Just be aware that some systems like a Nintendo DS does require additional BIOS files, which I already made a guide if you want to check that out. With that said, the older the system is, the harder it is to extract the physical games. For some systems like the PS1 and PS2, you can just back them up with a DVD drive. But for even older systems like the NES and Sega Genesis, you may need a device like the open source cartridge reader or the OSCR. The OSCR is extremely expensive and requires adapter cards for the more obscure systems. For the price though, it's very easy to use, and outside of the software bugs for Lynx games, its compatibility is the best that I've seen and well worth the price for the convenience, especially since the OSCR is still in active development. But if you are on a budget, there are alternatives like the INL Retro. It handles most popular systems and is a good value for what it does, especially NES games, though it is certainly harder to use, and it feels almost as if you need a degree in computer science to even try. Unfortunately, the project has been abandoned for a long time, so recommending this as is a bit difficult. Though it is still a good tool if it supports the games you want to back up. Though the backup tool that I would recommend if you're on a budget is the GBxCART. It's cheap, it's very easy to use, and it's perfect if you want to back up your Game Boy or Game Boy Advance games as well as their saves. If you're a fan of Pokemon, this accessory is a must-have, though it's only sold as a bare PCB and is strongly recommended to get a case for it like the one that we make. Lastly, you may be searching around the internet for a device and you may stumble across the Retro 2. Its plug-and-play functionality makes it the easiest system to use here, but with an extremely limited and odd selection of compatible systems, it will need to be paired with another cartridge reader to fill out its compatibility. Plus, with the original developers abandoning the project, don't expect any new add-ons or support for the hardware. Overall, while it wasn't cheap to back up my entire game library, I feel it was well worth the endeavor, especially since now I can digitally buy older games and play them even on my original hardware with a flash cart or newer retro-inspired system without paying the eBay tax. Plus, with my physical game library backed up, I don't need to worry about the flash or ROM chips degrading or discs being broken or rotting. And I can play them all on systems that I actually want to use. Though if you are buying a cartridge reader, I cannot recommend the open source cartridge reader enough, especially this one from Save the Hero Builder, regardless of which solution you end up going with. I hope this video was helpful, and as always, the Links to all this will be in the description below. Thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you have yourself a good day, and as always, take care.